Very, very weak laws. We have the worst laws you ever think, catch and release, which we're terminating very quickly. We're doing it in pieces. If one foot hits our country, we have to take those people, gently register them, and then release them. Okay? We're going to release them, essentially, in a short period of time. So we release them. And then they're supposed to come back for a court case. We hire more judges. We're trying to hire thousands of judges. No other country in the world does it. We hire judges so that these people will come back. If you have a baby on our land, congratulations, that baby is a United States citizen. We're the only one. But I'll tell you what, the laws of this country have to be strengthened and toughened up because it is crazy. We're going to have our wall, and we're going to get it very strongly. The military is going to be building some of it, but we're going to have very strong borders, and we have to change our laws, and we're working on doing that.
Now, the president is so right. Think about this. America's immigration laws are so ridiculously idiotic, foolish, outdated, and they're constantly being abused. Now, there's a reason why just about every other country on the face of the earth, they do things differently. They're a lot tougher on illegal immigrants, and Mexico leads the way. And the president is now taking matters into his own hands. Now, last night he signed that proclamation to send the National Guard to the southern border to assist our Border Patrol with security until, of course, we can build the wall. And tonight the president is saying between 2,000, 4,000 troops will be sent down to protect the southern border. Great idea. Finally, we're going to get that done. Now, liberals, of course, they're furious, even though there is a long-established precedent for doing this. Yeah, that's right. Barack Obama and George W. Bush, they did the same thing. Doesn't seem to matter to the left in this country because they just oppose every single thing that President Trump does. Now, the liberal Oregon governor, Kate Brown, she's saying she's going to refuse to send National Guard troops from her state to the border if she's asked by President Trump. Montana Governor Steve Bullock, he's saying he'll never deploy the National Guard. Here's a question. Do any of these states have opioid problems? In other words, drugs coming across the Mexican border? Watch this show on Showtime called Trade. It gives you a lot of detail about where those drugs come from. And a battle also appears to be brewing between the Trump administration and the sanctuary state of California over whether California is going to comply with the president's plan. Now, as we have been reporting on this right here on this program, California is now ground zero for the leftist resistance to the president's attempts to combat illegal immigration. As a result, President Trump, once again, he is blasting sanctuary states like California and this corrupt, aiding and abetting criminal behavior mayor of Oakland. Take a look.
If you look in California and you see what's happening, it's an incredible phenomenon because sanctuary cities, it's the worst. It's basically a city to protect a lot of people that are bad people. How about the mayor of Oakland, where she tells 1,000 people to get going, law enforcement's coming to get you. And this was all planned, and many of them scattered. And it was pretty much a failure. I mean, to me, that's obstruction of justice. And something should happen there. And it hasn't, and I don't know why it hasn't, but something should happen there.
Yeah, that is obstruction of justice. That's called aiding and abetting criminals. By the way, that's not DACA. It's not dreamers. These are illegal immigrants in the country committing more crimes. Now, remember, she gave a warning to these criminal illegal immigrants that they were going to be deported by ICE and gave them a warning. And because of her actions, we know that hundreds of people were able to avoid being apprehended. And of course, she put the Border Patrol in jeopardy because you don't know what's going to happen after you warn them that they're going to be raided. Now, also tonight, liberal members of the mainstream corrupt media, they're losing their minds over the president's comments today about sexual assault, rape, and violence that are committed by some illegal immigrants against migrant women. Watch this.
Remember my opening remarks at Trump Tower when I opened? Everybody said, oh, he was so tough. And I used the word rape. And yesterday it came out where this journey coming up, women are raped at levels that nobody's ever seen before. They don't want to mention that.
Here's a question for the left, liberal Democrats, all these people that support illegal immigration in this country. All right, can you explain to the members of this country and our community and our family in America how it is so outrageous for the president to actually speak about the violence that is being committed by some against migrant women? Now, think about this. If one American woman gets raped, isn't that too much? If one American woman, let's say Kate Steinle, gets murdered, isn't that one too many? And nobody seems to be saying that, all these people that cross the border, they are guilty of this. Nobody's saying that. It's not all people. We know that people come across the border. They want a better life for their children, their grandchildren. We're just asking, come legally. Now, since the media is impervious to truth and facts, let us educate them as we always need to. Earlier this week, the LA Times, they reported on the caravans that moved through Latin America, and they found that robberies, rapes, assaults perpetrated by smugglers, cartel members, and Mexican immigration agents are common. And in one incident, they pointed to, a number of years ago, 72 in 2010 kidnapped migrants were killed by a cartel in northern Mexico. Now, look at this McClatchy report. Same year, as many as 6 out of every 10 Central American women and girls are raped as they pass through Mexico, hoping to cross illegally into the United States, Amnesty International reported. Now, these numbers are beyond disturbing. And then, of course, there's all the human smuggling, all the sex trafficking. We played the tape numerous times, 642,000 crimes, charges against illegal immigrants in a 7-year period against Americans in one state. That's crimes against Texans, and including the most violent crimes. Now, from all the information we have, it is a very serious problem that is impacting people in our country. Now, what's so inexcusable about all of this is the left refused to respect America's right to sovereignty and security. It's not their families that are dealing with this, apparently. And by the way, this includes all the facts and all the evidence. Listen to this. Under President Trump, border crossings are down over 70%. But since Congress refused to build the wall, we're now beginning to see an uptick at the border. Take a look at this headline. Illegal immigration up 200% just this past month in March after Senate legalization debate. People trying to come into the country illegal. Guess what? There's nothing stupid about what they're doing, especially people that want a better life, and they know America's back door is wide open, and they know they can essentially walk in whenever they want. Well, that also means people that are criminal elements, they too can walk in. That means even gang members can walk in. And that means people, even terrorists can walk in. Every American is in jeopardy. And according to the Department of Justice, asylum seekers have an 88% percentage chance of avoiding expedited removal just by claiming they have a, quote, credible fear. Now, there's a reason why President Trump's poll numbers are now surging. Why? It's very simple. He's actually keeping his word, his campaign promises, and the American people like it, and they're responding positively, no matter how much they lie about him, attack him on basically everything. This is a model for the rest of the GOP and the Republican Party. You want to win in 2018? Keep your promises. Fight for the American people. Just basic, simple common sense and good business. All right, we also have tonight huge developments in the House Intel Committee. Chairman Devin Nunes' attempt to get to the truth about the corrupt Russia investigation. Now, the FBI is finally responding tonight to Chairman Nunes and his request for Congress to be able to see an unredacted revision of the original document that set off this phony Russia probe. Now, in a statement, the FBI is saying, quote, the FBI received the reference letter from Chairman Nunes, and we are reviewing it to determine the next steps. As a general matter, before FBI records may be released outside the FBI to include congressional committees, they must first undergo our standard review and redaction process to ensure that statutorily restricted information, such as grand jury material, classified material, sensitive law enforcement material, and other privileged material, is not improperly disclosed. Okay, they first requested this in August of 2017. They've had plenty of time to do their job. And by the way, you want to protect classified information? Why did you give Hillary a pass? Why did you exonerate her without investigating her? So it sounds like here the FBI is going to again refuse to comply with the request to turn over unredacted documents. Now, Chairman Nunes, he's given the Bureau, the DOJ, until next Wednesday to cooperate, and he's going to issue subpoenas. I have a better idea. How about we hold Rod Rosenstein in contempt of Congress, because he's the one stonewalling. Never seen such a level of stonewalling. And it's being led by Rosenstein, and it's reaching unprecedented levels. Seems that Rosenstein is terrified that the American people are actually going to find out the truth about all these nefarious activities the top-ranking FBI DOJ officials were doing against the Trump campaign. In other words, his friends. And remember, Rosenstein, well, he's the guy groveling to Paul Ryan in January and begging the speaker to prevent Nunes from actually seeing the documents that later became the Nunes memo. Now, Rosenstein clearly has his way. We wouldn't know anything about rampant FISA abuses. And by the way, he has a major conflict of interest in all of this. He should have recused himself, and he should be removed now. And that's why Congressman Nunes is doing, these things which are so important. And if the FBI and Rod Rosenstein, if they want to continue to obstruct Congress from conducting oversight, then Nunes needs to issue more subpoenas and hold these people in contempt. Now, the deep state is scared to death because they know the truth is now being uncovered and what they did is now being exposed. And also, we know it to be illegal. Now, also tonight, a House Judiciary Committee aide is telling Fox News, again, the DOJ has failed to meet, in this case, Chairman Bob Goodlatte's deadline to turn over 1.2 million documents. This is now obstruction on their part. Congress has a constitutional role. It's called oversight. It's called checks and balances. It's called co-equal branches of government, remember? And this is why it is critical that Congress keeps pressing for answers. Now, one of the biggest liberals trying to block this from happening, our friend Democratic Congressman, wannabe MSNBC conspiracy host Adam Schiff. Now, he is by far the biggest liar in the United States Congress, and we have the evidence. Here's why. For over a year, Adam Schiff, has been purposefully and maliciously misleading the entire country about what is really going on with the Russia investigation. You don't believe it? Take a look at his ever-changing talking points. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. He doesn't even remember his own lies. Take a look.
What do you got hard?
Well, Chris, unfortunately, I can't go into the evidence that's being presented to the committee.
Do you have something hard that you can't reveal?
I can't reveal that, Chris. Of course, there's one thing to say there's evidence. There's another thing to say we can prove this or prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, or there's enough evidence to bring to a grand jury for purposes of a criminal indictment. I don't think we can say anything definitively at this point. We are still at the very early stage of the investigation.
We haven't seen an actual proof of cooperation and collusion. So what am I missing here?
Well, I think you have to look at the pattern and the chronology. The Russians offered help. The campaign accepted help. The Russians gave help, and the president made full use of that help. And that is pretty damning.
Last March, you said you had more than circumstantial evidence of treasonous collusion with Russia. What specifically were you referring to? And please be specific, because if it's true, I do believe Americans have the right to know a year later what that is.
Well, I've certainly said that there's ample evidence of collusion. I've never used the word treason. Only Steve Bannon has used that word. But if you look at the facts that are already in the public domain, they're pretty damning. The American people need to know whether the Russians still have something they can hold over the president's head, the president of the United States. So our work is far from done. I can certainly say with confidence that there is significant evidence of collusion between the campaign and Russia.
Collusion is not a crime. You're supposed to be a congressman. You're nothing but a national embarrassment. You've had 14 months. This guy is just pathetic. He can't even keep his own story straight, and he looks stupid on The View, which, by the way, is a spectacular achievement. And at this point, Congressman Schiff has zero credibility, which makes him the perfect candidate to be a contributor on Conspiracy TV, MSNBC. And let's be honest, that's probably his ultimate goal. Now, also tonight, Catherine Herridge. She has uncovered newly released text messages between the FBI lovebirds, professional Trump haters, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, and they indicate that Strzok went to London in August of 2016 to interview a key witness just days after the FBI opened their Russia investigation. Interesting. He's the guy at the heart of all of this. Now, according to these texts, the Trump-hating FBI official, appears to be he and his lover debating what they're going to reveal to their bosses at the FBI when Strzok gets back to Washington, D.C. What do we tell them? How about the truth? And then a week later, the texts also seem to reference a series of high-profile briefings beginning at the Obama White House and on Capitol Hill. Question is, who was Strzok interviewing in Great Britain? Could it have been Christopher Steele? We're going to continue to stay on that story. Finally tonight, All right, Hillary Clinton needs to go away. You know what? She can't accept she's lost. She's regularly just adding to this very, very long list of people, places, and things for her stunning election defeat. She was a horrible candidate, no message. It's pathetic at this point. I almost, not quite, almost feel sorry for her. Now take a look at this list that Hillary can't stop. She's got a problem. Imagine if she was president, actually scary. And now instead of constantly whining and complaining about losing, Hillary is actually now trying to take credit, Hillary Clinton, for starting the Me Too movement. I didn't make this up. Take a look.
I believe that it was a wave that was building and building and building. I think my losing probably accelerated that wave, but the wave was coming.
She's just delusional, or maybe she thinks we're too dumb and we'll actually believe her. Here's a little newsflash for Hillary. She was best friends with serial abuser Harvey Weinstein, who's been accused of sexual misconduct by all of those women. And according to the Center for Responsive Politics, Weinstein donated $44,000 to the Clintons' campaign, gave an additional $15,000 to her super PAC or super PACs with ties to the Clintons. So, Hillary, no, you didn't have anything to do with the Me Too movement. Instead, you kind of propped up people like Weinstein. And then there's this little uncomfortable truth that, yeah, you viciously smeared Hillary, slandered Hillary, and tried to discredit your husband's accusers. Remember, you threatened Jennifer Flowers, saying that you would crucify her in a courtroom? And then you claimed that Monica Lewinsky was a narcissistic Looney Tune, and then refused to deny that you said it years later in an interview with Diane Sawyer. And then, of course, you intimidated Juanita Broderick after she accused your husband of raping her in a hotel in Arkansas. And we can't forget how her family foundation took tens of millions of dollars from all these countries that abuse women. So, Hillary, we know you're bitter about what happened. Here's some free advice. Do yourself a favor. Go fishing. Stop talking. And with reaction, NRA TV contributor, former Secret Service agent Dan Bongino, author of the best-selling book, now in bookstores this week, Geraldo, The Geraldo Show, Fox News correspondent at large. You know, Geraldo, this comes down to a very fundamental issue as it relates to the president. There are people that have crossed this border, those weak borders, and have raped Americans. There are, not the majority, nobody's saying majority. I know most people want jobs and a better opportunity. I don't blame people. I've been down to the border. I've been in Mexico. And other people like Kate Steinle have been murdered. Isn't one murder, isn't one rape enough? Because the numbers of violent crimes are in the hundreds of thousands, Geraldo, over the years.
First of all, Sean, we had a little earthquake here in California today, 5.3 on the Richter scale.
That's because you're out there.
Your opening monologue was a lot tougher than the earthquake. I also want to say before I start that I share your enthusiasm that the president's approval ratings have now ticked up, and indeed, in at least one survey, are above 50% for the first time during
51.
his presidency. 51. But I do believe, and this is where I know that you and I disagree, and I disagree with, when most of the audience watching me right now will disagree. I think that this immigrant crisis is manufactured. I think is an overreaction to that so-called caravan of 1,000 that is now broken up in the southern city of Oaxaca, and they're between Oaxaca and Puebla. They're all now seeking asylum in Mexico.
Let me interrupt.
They're not coming this way.
You've seen the tape. I've sat through a security briefing in a 7-year period of time, including murder and rape and other violent crimes, 642,000 crimes in total. You've seen me play the tape. How could you say that that's being overstated?
I say it with absolute certainty. I say it that illegal immigration across the southern border is near 46-year lows. We did have a spike in March, probably having to do with the demand for agricultural workers here in the southwestern part of the country.
If one woman gets raped or one Kate Steinle gets murdered, isn't that enough that we protect our family, our fellow Americans first?
Sean, it absolutely is. I was listening to Mark Stein the other night, and he had a great comment. He said, it's odd. If you're an American citizen entering back into America at an airport, you get a damn cavity search at the border by our own people. And yet you have people who just casually walk across the southern border, narco traffickers. We know terrorists are aware of the southern border. I know Geraldo and I had a beef about this the other day, but it's true. It's a fact. I know they're aware of the southern border. People have died. And Sean, there's a real price to illegal immigration. I don't know why Geraldo keeps denying that.
20 seconds, Geraldo.
That is not fair. That is not fair. I do not deny that there is crime committed against these poor, vulnerable people coming from the South, fleeing disrupted economies, drug cartels, gangsters, murder. They're seeking a better life, just as our immigrant parents sought a better life here.
We got a break.
I get that.
That's why. Both.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No. Thank you both.
We are told that Mueller wants to interview the President of the United States, who knows nothing, who has been a witness to nothing, who is not a target of the investigation. What we are seeing now is conduct by two public officials, Robert Mueller and Rod Rosenstein, that is unethical, unprofessional, an embarrassment to the United States government, and is undermining equal enforcement of the law. This is a perjury trap, plain and simple.
I agree with
this
the
is
perjury
nonsense.
trap point.
This is absolutely outrageous. It should end right now.
Former U.S. Attorney Joe DeGenevieve on this program last night just eviscerating the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein and Robert Mueller. And the mainstream media, by the way, also deserves blame. Joining us now, George Washington University law professor Jonathan Turley. He has a great column up on thehill.com entitled, "When Will the Media Accept That Trump is Not a Criminal Target?" Professor, I'll let you answer your own question. They seem not to want to accept that reality. It's been, over a year we've been looking into this in a lot of varying ways.
Yeah, there's a troubling pathology in the news where people seem to be unwilling to cover what is positive news for President Trump. There's not positive news as well, but that rather one-sided account is getting increasingly alarming. The fact is that there is not a strong, credible case of crime that is emerging from this investigation. After a year, after hundreds of thousands of documents that have been turned over, after multiple cooperating witnesses, after dozens of criminal counts, none of those filings have created a nexus between a criminal act and the president or even the campaign for the most part.
And collusion, Professor, is not a crime, is it?
It's not, and we went through months where people were talking as if there was a collusion crime. But the interesting thing is, look, on collusion and obstruction, you have an exceptionally weak case that has emerged so far. On collusion, there is an absence of evidence. There's just simply an absence of anything connecting the president or the campaign. The last major filing said that no Trump official knowingly engaged Russians in their hacking aspect of their intervention. There could be new evidence, but we haven't heard of it. On the issue of obstruction, I think the president has what may be insurmountable defenses. He can easily argue that he fired Comey for cause. Lots of people are calling for him to be fired.
Rosenstein recommended it too. He'd be witness number one, which I think conflicts him out of the whole deal, and even the appointment of Mueller. Let me ask you this. If there's no underlying crime, Professor, which you're saying and asserting there isn't, and he has the right to fire anybody, and there's no crime of collusion, and why would any lawyer allow a sitting president to be questioned by a special counsel?
Well, Sean, first of all, we need to be careful. Obviously, we don't know what Mueller has. There may be more crime evidence. There may be more allegations to make, but we haven't seen them so far, and that's quite telling. And the president's status hasn't changed in a year. He was a subject before. He still is a subject and not a target. But as for the sit-down, it's going to be hard for the president not to do that. The good news is that Mueller's asking about 4 categories where I think his defenses, the president's defenses, are the strongest. They're sort of frontal attacks where the armor is the thickest. I think that he could sit down and thread that needle if he listens to his counsel and prepares for it.
But why should he have to, I guess is the question. I'll ask Mark Levin that. What about Article 1 that literally empowers Congress for oversight purposes in the government. And I only have about 25 seconds. Doesn't Congress have to, doesn't the DOJ have to cooperate? These subpoenas went out in August of 2017.
Right. No, I agree with you on that. I've been a long advocate of congressional oversight authority. I think Congress rolls over too readily. This has been too long. That material should have been turned over. I'm not too sure why it has not. But at some point, Congress has to think about using some of its inherent authority to say this isn't just a voluntary act. You know, we are an equal branch of government.
Yeah, co-equal, supposedly. All right. Professor, good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, when we come back, the great one, Mark Levin, weighs in on whether the president should ever talk to Robert Mueller. That's next. All right, joining us now, the host of CRTV, Levin TV, and the host of Life, Liberty, and Levin right here on the Fox News Channel. As a matter of fact, this weekend, Governor Palin is going to be your guest on the show. I've always liked Governor Palin, and we haven't heard from her in a while. I look forward to watching, Mark. All right, so the big question now is what the president needs to do. Apparently, the president's lawyers are negotiating with the special counsel over the idea that the president would speak with Robert Mueller. The president himself, he's like, I have nothing to hide, I'd speak with him. But if there's no underlying crime, if collusion is not a crime, and the president has the right to fire Comey or anybody else, and even Comey admitted as much, then the question is, you know, if they want to get into the president's mindset, your thoughts can't represent a crime, in my opinion. You're the constitutional expert. Would you allow, if the president was your client, would you allow him to speak to Robert Mueller?
No. And let me tell you, I wouldn't allow him to speak for his sake and for the sake of the office of the presidency. Because this is a rogue prosecutor who's investigating nothing. Do you understand that? He's investigating nothing. There's no underlying crime. When he got his appointment by the Deputy Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General did not provide any basis for the appointment. That is, he didn't say, here are the criminal statutes I want you to investigate, because there aren't any. I want to make a point that I don't believe anybody else has made, and this is very, very important for the president and for the president's lawyers and the nation. The official position of the United States Department of Justice under a Democrat administration and a Republican administration was set out by the Office of Legal Counsel, that's the constitutional office within the Department of Justice, in 2 memoranda. And these memoranda say that a president of the United States cannot be indicted while he's in office. Cannot be indicted while he's in office. So he can't be a criminal target. The president of the United States can't be a criminal target because he can't be indicted. That's the official position of Mr. Mueller's bosses over there at the Department of Justice. That's number one. Number two, I keep hearing, well, what if he's subpoenaed to appear before the grand jury? Subpoenaed to appear before the grand jury. Well, then you go to the federal judge and you say to the federal judge, Your Honor, my client can't be indicted. That's the position of his bosses. So why is he going in front of a federal grand jury? Well, we need him as a witness. A witness to what? What criminal statute or what criminal violations do you think he was a witness to that he needs to testify to? Well, we think he may have committed obstruction. And even though we may not charge him, excuse me, Mr. Mueller, this is a criminal grand jury. This isn't being done so you can issue your report. So there are many constitutional obstacles, of course, to this argument that the president obstructed justice. So firing a subordinate is obstructing justice? That's absurd. If that's obstructing justice, then when Mr. Mueller fired Mr. Stroke, maybe that's obstruction of justice too, interfering with an investigation. What I'm saying is, when I watch people come on TV and say, well, he can be subpoenaed. Well, anybody can be subpoenaed. He's the president of the United States, and you damn well better have a strong reason for trying to drag him in front of a grand jury. That's number one. Number two, a federal judge is not going to just accept that kind of a spectacle, and Mr. Mueller knows it. That's why they're trying to negotiate and reach some kind of a deal. You're going to drag a president who's dealing with all these issues all over the world, who's dealing with China and Russia and North Korea and Iran and so forth and so on, and bring him in front of a grand jury? A judge is not going to want that kind of a constitutional crisis. That's why Mr. Mueller's trying to negotiate some basis to interview Mr. Trump. But if I were Mr. Trump, I'd say, you know what? I didn't do anything wrong, and that's exactly why I'm not talking to you. That's number one. I'm going to protect this office for Democrats and Republicans who are elected president of the United States. That's number two. and you have crimes that you want to prosecute, go for it, baby. But I didn't commit a crime. I'm not going to be indicted. I'm not going to be dragged in front of a federal grand jury, and that's that. That's what the president should say.
Let me ask you this next question, because I think this is key. And there's been very few of us that have done this deep dive into this, I would argue, corrupt team that Robert Mueller's put together. Everyone can say he is beyond reproach. Well, I look at his handling in the anthrax case post 9/11. I look at, the case when he was in Boston as it relates to Whitey Bulger. 4 innocent people went to jail, $100+ million settlement. 2 of those guys, 2 of the 4 died in jail. Then you got this guy, Andrew Weissman. The New York Times calls him Mueller's pit bull. Okay, that's a guy that, as a result of his actions, twice was excoriated by judges for withholding exculpatory evidence. Tens of thousands of jobs were lost at Anderson Accounting for no reason at all. Right. Overturned 9-0 in the Supreme Court. You and I both know that doesn't happen a lot. And a guy that sent 4 Merrill executives to jail, Mark, 4 for a year, and that was overturned by the Fifth Circuit. Wait a minute. Why would Robert Mueller, with his background, be appointing only Obama, only Hillary, only DNC donors, and corrupt people like Weissman to his team to be his pit bull?
And why are the Democrats so keen on him? And why are the media so keen on him? And there's lots of leaks coming out of that operation, too. Among them, to the Washington Post the other day, is he wants to put a report out by June or July where they're probably going to suggest the President of the United States committed obstruction of justice. Not only is that outrageous, to the extent he does a report, it's supposed to be to the Deputy Attorney General on the crimes he's found or the crimes he's prosecuting. He's not supposed to give opinions. Let's be clear about something. The media treat this guy like he's a judge. He's not a judge. He's a prosecutor. And there's 2 sides to every argument. That's number 1. Number 2, he's going to put out a report accusing the President of the United States of obstruction of justice, when in fact, that means that the President of the United States will be accused of obstruction of justice for impeachment purposes. That leak should tell the President of the United States everything he needs to know, which is that Mueller is out to destroy him. He's out to write a report, to give it to the Democrats in the House of Representatives.
We only have a little over a minute left. And I would argue he would be stepping right into a perjury trap if there's no underlying crime and they can't indict the president.
Defend the office of the presidency and defend yourself.
Well said. That's why we call you the great one. Rod Rosenstein, he shouldn't even be in this position, number 1. Number 2, isn't he conflicted out if he's the number 1 witness as it relates to obstruction with Comey because he wrote a letter recommending such, and in fact, he signed on to this, extended this FISA warrant himself, knowing that this was bought and paid for, Hillary propaganda, Russian lies, and then appoints Mueller? How does he get away with that conflict? How does he how do you see him in all this?
I see him as very bizarre and really out of line. In addition to everything you've said, we now know that when Mueller went into Mr. Manafort's apartment at 5 or 6 in the morning, when he and his wife were in bed with the FBI's with their guns drawn, he got a warrant from a federal judge. When he went in there, gathered information, and then he goes to the Deputy Attorney General a week later to have his authority expanded to cover what he had just done a week before. So Mr. Rosenstein expands his authority to cover the tracks for Mueller, who was doing things he shouldn't have done. And the reason why this is important in America is this. Mr. Rosenstein is not the Attorney General of the United States.
Well said.
And he's acting like it.
All right, Sunday night, 10 p.m., Life, Liberty, Levin. Governor Palin will be Mark's guest, and you don't want to miss it. I'm watching every week. Thank you, great one. Appreciate it. When we come back, incredible ugliness from the left. You won't believe what they're saying about President Trump, Republicans. This crosses even a new line. Newt Gingrich is next. Straight ahead. All right, so the left's hatred for Republicans and President Trump, it knows no bounds. Just listen to what California Senator Kamala Harris joked about with Ellen DeGeneres earlier today.
If you had to be stuck in an elevator with either President Trump, Mike Pence, or Jeff Sessions, who would it be?
Does one of us have to come out alive?
One of us have to come out alive. And then yesterday, Robert De Niro, he was asked about the success of the Roseanne reboot. He took a shot at the president and said, quote, "We're at a point with all of this where it's beyond trying to see another person's point of view. There are ways that you can talk about that, but we're at a point where the things that are happening in the country are so bad, and it comes from Trump. There are so many people who have left this administration. It's a serious thing. So I don't care about Roseanne." Well, it sounds like De Niro isn't happy that there finally is a TV show that actually appeals to Americans that they actually want to watch. With reaction, the author of the best-selling book, Vengeance, he's been incognito. He's been missing in action. Former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. Welcome back, sir. How are you?
Well, it's good to be with you. And the fact is, we're in the middle of a cultural civil war, and the language is the language of a civil war. People say horrendous things, and they mean them. I mean, I think on the left, the level of hostility at every single zone. If you look at people like Marco Rubio being charged with, he's responsible for murder if he takes money from the NRA. I mean, this is the kind of horrific language that makes it impossible to bring people together because they really are that far apart.
Yeah. So the president's not a target. We learned that. And we know that the Washington Post even reporting, all right, the Mueller's unlikely to indict Trump, a sitting president. Collusion isn't a crime. And I'm watching all of this unfold, and he's going to issue a series of reports on all of this. And then we see this whole other side where Hillary steals a primary. Then Hillary has the fix, and we know she deleted, acid wash, subpoenaed emails, breaks up, different devices. All that happens. Then we find out, it takes a year, we find out she's the one that paid for the phony Russian dossier. You have the cover-up of the crime she committed with Comey, Strzok, Page, McCabe, and of course, Loretta Lynch. And then they lie to a FISA court. We have real evidence and real proof. No evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. But that's all the rest of the media talks about. And then, of course, the president has a lot of success stories. Nobody talks about that either. Why?
Well, let me go back to a very simple model. We're in a cultural civil war. If you are the left, you never talk about your side's weaknesses, and you never acknowledge the other side's strengths. And, of course, what's happening to the left is if you're an average American, you see more jobs every month, more investment every month. You see Trump doing what he promised he would do. You see him standing up for America. And your choice is left-wingers who think it's okay to have thousands of people cross the border versus protecting America. Inch by inch, Trump is actually organizing, exactly like Andrew Jackson, a majority that I think will get him reelected and that will actually be decisive in changing America's future.
All right, so you wrote a column, Mitch McConnell out there saying, Republicans are going to face strong headwinds. We hear from anybody else in the media, a big blue wave is coming in November. You believe Republicans can win in November. I think there's a lot at stake, not the least of which, if Pelosi becomes Speaker, they would want to impeach Donald Trump, and they'll make up a reason if they have to. So the question is, what do the Republicans need to do? It's April from now till November to win.
Well, let me remind everyone, having spent a lot of my years, as you know, as an old friend, campaigning, I was behind 51-37 in September in my third campaign, having lost twice. I won that election 54-46. George H.W. Bush was behind in May by 19 points, won in November by 6. That means 1 out of every 5 Americans switched between May and November. Now, why do I say that? We're a long way from the 2018 election. If we end up with the anti-tax cut Democrats, the anti-Semitic Democrats, the socialist Democrats, the nutcake Democrats, the people who have no positive solution for anything, if they end up being what the issue's about, we're going to win a shocking election. If we're passive, slow, and stupid, and we allow them to define the election, we could lose. So the test for the Republican Party, one of the greatest tests of my lifetime, can we tell a simple, clear-cut story? And Trump